Good evening. I'm your host, Davis, and I would like to welcome you to the intersection where all the greatest achievements of mankind have originated. The intersection of thoughts and actions. Everything you see started as a mere idea, an idle thought that grew. It grew because of the actions taken to build on it. Tonight, our special guest is Nathan, and we would like for you to join us as we stand at the crossroads of inspiration and take you on that journey. So, Nathan, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Nathan H. Green. I'm a science fiction fantasy author. I live in Burlington, Ontario, Canada. I am also a practicing corporate lawyer. I kind of write for half the time. I practice law for half the time. And my undergraduate degree is in aerospace engineering. So I bring a very technical focus to my writing. And I'm promoting a new book, Treason's Temple. It's about two teenagers on a quest in a future dystopian America to save their family and stay alive. But I'm excited for my short story today and to hear yours.
Excellent. Oh, yeah. I worked really hard on mine, but I'm really excited to hear yours. As I said before, every single guest I've had on has been an absolutely amazing writer and had amazing ideas, and I'm sure that you're just as good, if not better than some of them, or maybe all of them. You never know. But I can honestly say I'm very eager, and that book sounds really interesting. Can you repeat the name of it again?
Sure, it's Treason's Temple.
Treason's Temple. Yeah, that really nice title. I love it.
Oh, thank you. That was about the third attempt at a title. My wife hated the first two working titles.
Oh my. Well, hey, that's what a creative process is about: shifting and changing to make things better.
Absolutely.
So today's writing prompt is kind of a unique one. It's time traveler goes to the Middle Ages and finds out that a dragon was actually a T-Rex. Very long, complicated prompt, but still a really interesting concept. So I would love to hear what you have to go on that.
Okay, so I'll go first.
Yep.
Okay. First thing I did was check my return ticket. That's SOP. The titanium band around my left wrist was 4 inches tall, an inch thick, and rated to survive being run over by a tank. 2 small green LEDs blinked on its surface. Good. The act of 3 people flashing into existence hadn't been enough, in and of itself, to erase the Temporal Security Division and our way home. Not that it ever happened before, and the nerds claimed that they would somehow know if it had. Temporal dynamics are not my thing. Alls I knows is if that the little green LED on your return ticket stops blinking, then the future you left no longer exists, and you have to figure out what you changed and unchange it. While the 2 vectors who'd come back with me were busy being amazed that they were now 900 years in the past, I took 4 steps back and rested my right hand on the grip of my sidearm. About a third of the time, when a vector intends to try and off their temporal protection officer, that's me. They try it immediately upon arrival. I know the vectors don't have guns, but no matter how carefully you check before departure, things like poison needles, pressurized neurotoxins, and anti-personnel mag bombs can, and have, been smuggled back. Hell, they could just take a swing at me with a shovel. The vectors didn't notice. That's a good sign. I've never had a vector turn on me, but I imagine they'd be a bit overly observant of me if they were planning to do something. The blonde gasped. "What's that smell?" She started huffing air, trying to drink it in. I just inhaled. Even with a PM 1.5 air filter, I couldn't get the air back home to smell anything like it does in the 1340s. It isn't just cleaner. There's something about the old-growth forest, native flowers, billions of birds and predators and prey, the churn of life that somehow just smells right. It was one memory I was definitely going to miss after I got paid. The blonde's question might have been meant for me, but it was the second and last vector, the professor, who answered. Pollen. It's the end of spring. The walking cliché didn't know. In his 50s, chubby, dressed for a safari, the professor screamed academic and probably wanted to sound smart. But find me a botanical garden that smells like this. Seriously, I've tried. The forest was alive with birds, thousands of songs and calls and chirps. I unslung the rifle over my shoulder and set its magnetic lens to its maximum range. Over the town of 1340s Baffert, Germany, cooking smoke from dozens of hovels rose into the mid-afternoon sphere of the sun. There's something like 1,000 people who live there, but apparently one of the cute little traditions at Baffert was communal cooking between different families. Fewer fires, less smoke, less wood, and a whole lot safer. Of course, not a great arrangement when a plague hits. The Vectors were busy setting up their gear and having a very focused and very boring debate about whether they should be trying to climb a tree to get a better view of the town or hike back away from it towards some bluffs behind us to get a view from there. Beyond Baffert was forest again, and I scanned the trees and looked for myself from a previous or future trip. The nerds back at the TPD denied it, but so far as I was concerned, there ought to be 94 me's spread out in the forest around Baffert right now, all looking for each other. I'd never seen myself, and apparently wouldn't. The blonde had gotten a telescoping pole from her pack, and the two Vectors were trying to hoist a magnetic mic up a dozen yards off the ground into a tree, doing wonders to its bark and small branches in the process. They got it eventually, though. I tapped the comms implant in my left ear and took a few steps further back from my Vectors. Somewhere in the village, at the focal point of a 20-yard diameter, invisible, magnetic lens, a woman was chopping up vegetables and telling an excited posse of children a story. My comms had the gold standard for translation software built in, and the computer even matched her voice, pitch, and dynamic tone as it translated. "And what did the dragon say?" the woman asked, her voice soft, playful, notes of love woven into it. "Roar!" the dozen children shouted in unison. Hard not to imagine myself as a kid down there, listening to the story, wide-eyed, normal life, no Dave, just growing up like a normal goddamn person. Fuck it, 5 more trips after this and I'll have my own memories like this. "That's right," the woman said, picking up the story. "And the children ran away. They ran as fast as they could. And what did they do when they got back home? They told their parents." "They did. And you should always tell us when you find something important." "And the village sent Wilhelm. Was Wilhelm the strongest? No. Was he the fastest? No. That's right. Why did we send Wilhelm then? Smartest. That's right. And when Wilhelm went out to the caves, he went very slowly, very carefully, and he found the dragon. Even though he had his sword and spear, he knew he couldn't defeat a dragon, and so he waited and waited until the dragon went to sleep. And then he snuck past it into the caves and found the wizard. Wilhelm told the wizard to leave and take his dragon with him, but the wizard said no, and promised that as long as no one went to the Frederick Caves again, no one would ever see or hear from his dragon. Wilhelm agreed, and that's why we never, ever, ever go to the Frederick Caves. "That's a really well-evolved story," the blonde said from a squat on the forest floor. Her fingers tapped on the data pad quickly as she took notes, or indexed, or calculated. I actually have no idea how science works. "A subset of Beowulf, perhaps?" the professor said, a question somewhere under the surface. Mumble-mumble protagonists, mumble-mumble archetypes, mumble-mumble sui generis, mumble-mumble parable. 20 minutes of that between the blonde and the professor, I basically tuned out. A lot of the past trips used these mics to listen into conversations, and the local lore was a frequent topic, especially when it got into the evening. Most of the stories weren't really stories at all, more like extended parables. I honestly thought I was being stupid when I checked my return ticket. There were a dozen reasons why I didn't need to. The biggest one, though, was because we didn't come here randomly. In 6 months, the regional tax collector pays Baffert a visit to collect some of their harvest. His contingent is 12 men, and no less than 3 of them are active carriers of the bubonic plague. Baffert's close-knit genetics and habit of communal meals leave them extraordinarily vulnerable, and not a man, woman, or child of the town survives. To really round things out, the tax collector and his entourage get hit by bandits waiting in ambush on their trip back, and they're all killed. I could probably walk down there, announce I'm from the future, and get half the village pregnant, and it wouldn't so much as cause a flicker in the timeline. So imagine my surprise when that little green LED on my return ticket, that hasn't so much missed a beat in 94 prior trips, is stone dead. I have my sidearm out and leveled at the back of the professor's head before my heart finished contracting. Freeze! They do it. Slowly stand and face me, I order and tap my comms over to combat mode. The implant in my ear warms up as its processor runs pattern recognition software on every noise in the forest, looking for the sound of a human